Today we'll paint our Jen Aranyi inspired watercolor landscapes. If you've already drawn and traced with Sharpie your picture, you'll be ready to paint. When we're watercolor painting, there's a few things that we want to remember. If you're using a watercolor set that looks like this, we always want to keep the lid open. We want to use this part of the lid to mix colors as we paint, and we want to make sure that we're washing our brush in between colors. You can see in some of these spots that this person did not wash their brush, and then they mixed up the paints for everyone else, which isn't how we should be using the paints. We should try to be a little bit more careful. If you notice this has happened, one way that we can fix it is with some more water and a brush. So I'm going to take my brush that has water on it, and I'm going to hold it very gently. I'm just going to gently start to paint the parts that are not the right color. Then I'm going to take my brush, swish it in the water, and I'm going to repeat that step until the color looks more like its usual color should. So I'm just gradually picking up the wrong color, putting it into the water till my paint color is back to normal. So that can be how you can fix that problem if that has happened. That's another reminder, though, that we should be using water when we're painting. It's called watercolor for a reason. When we're watercoloring, we can also try to paint with some of the techniques that we learned earlier. So, for example, maybe I'm going to get some water on my brush and use the technique wet on wet to make some colors blend together in the sky. So I've wet part of the sky area, and then with my water, it'll start to blend and smooth together. Maybe I would want to use the technique of wet on dry as I start to paint around the mountains, so I can be a little bit more precise and careful. It's up to you to experiment with different techniques as we go. Another fun thing can be mixing colors, but remember, we don't want to mix them up in the pans, but they can mix on our paper or in the lid. So I could, if I want to get another color, rinse my brush in the water first, and then go into another color and let it mix on my paper. Or I can be mixing in the lid as I go. It's up to you what colors you want to use and how you want to try to experiment with painting your landscape. There's no right or wrong way to do it, and perhaps you might have even had time to make another landscape, so you'll have another area to experiment as well. For me, if I really want to emulate the styles of artist Jen Aranyi, I might choose to only paint the sky and leave all of this area down here as just a drawing. But if you want to try to paint that in your picture, you can decide as you are the artist for your artwork. I'm excited to see your progress today. Another reminder here, I have a lot of very light layers so far. My colors aren't very dark and saturated. That's because watercolor can sometimes work best in layers. So maybe I would let the amount that I've painted so far dry before I add even more to my picture. But if you really want a darker color from the beginning, what you can do with a clean brush when you're getting your paint, if you swirl one or two more turns in the paint, it'll be a darker and more concentrated color as you start to paint on your landscape. That's another thing to consider as you're working.